The moment my daughter, Ariana, opened the gift box from her in-laws in the middle of the wedding reception, the entire hall went silent. Inside wasn't a necklace or a congratulatory card. It was a cheap apron with bold printed words, "Get ready to serve your new family." Ariana froze, while her new mother-in-law, Vivian, smirked, as if she had just thrown a sentence in my daughter's face. I, Helena Foster, felt my chest tighten as if someone were crushing it. But instead of exploding, I quietly walked onto the stage, opened the leather bag I had carried with me all along, holding something Vivian would never expect, something that would turn this wedding in a direction no one could have imagined. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I heard Ariana take a shaky breath, her hand hesitating when it touched the rough polyester fabric inside the box. Her eyes, once bright and innocent beneath that classic white wedding dress, now seemed covered in a shadow. I had seen that look before, on the day my sister was humiliated by her husband's family right in front of countless people. Back then, I was young, helpless, and stood still watching tragedy unfold. But today, I am no longer that woman. A few whispers rose from the third row. Someone tried to stifle a laugh when they saw the red ink message on the apron, "Serve your new family." I saw Ariana pull her hand back as if that fabric had burned her skin. I had spent my entire life raising her to be kind, educated, and self-respecting, and now, on the most important day of her life, she was being treated like a cheap servant. Landon stood next to his bride, and what chilled my spine was his expression. Not surprised, not angry, just an awkward, embarrassed smile. The kind of embarrassment of someone who knew this would happen, but was pretending to be the good, supportive husband. Ariana turned to look at me, her eyes asking, "Mom, what did I do wrong?" I didn't let that despair last another second. I set my glass down and stepped onto the stage. Each step felt guided by a lifetime of experience, wounds, lessons, and my mother's old words. When you see injustice, you stand up, not for revenge, but to protect what's right. I opened the dark brown leather bag I had brought. No one knew what was inside, not even Ariana. I had planned to give it to her privately at the end of the reception, but Vivian chose to humiliate my daughter publicly in front of more than 100 people. And if she wanted it public, then I would oblige. I pulled out a thick folder tied with a navy ribbon, Ariana's favorite color since childhood. When I held it up, the stage lights reflected off the edges, drawing everyone's eyes toward me. "Ariana," I said, my voice firm but gentle, "I have a wedding gift for you, a gift to make sure you never have to bow your head to anyone." Ariana widened her eyes. Vivian frowned, the mocking smile fading from her face. I slowly untied the ribbon, opened the folder, and handed it to Ariana in front of everyone. "This is the deed to your new house, under your name alone. No one has the right to control or interfere with this property, not even your husband." If there were a sound to describe the hall's reaction, it would be a small explosion of shock. A few people gasped. An older gentleman at table 6 put his hand to his chest as if witnessing a plot twist in a drama series. Vivian jumped from her seat, her face shifting from red to white to purple. What do you think you're doing?" she hissed. I turned and gave her a small smile. "Me? I'm not doing anything. I'm simply protecting my daughter from the things you haven't done yet." My words sliced through the polished facade Vivian had worn for years. She stepped forward, grabbed the apron still lying on the table, threw it onto the floor, and tried to recover. It was just a joke. Ariana understands that." Ariana did not understand. She shook her head, lips pressed tight, tears brimming. She wasn't someone who cried easily, but being humiliated on your wedding day, anyone would crumble. Landon finally spoke, trying and failing to sound calm. "Helena, I think you're overreacting. This is our wedding, not an event for your family to turn her into a servant," I cut in. "If I stayed silent, that would be overreacting." The room erupted in murmurs. I knew I had struck a nerve, but I didn't regret it. I had seen too many women get joked at, only to lose themselves to subtle control from husbands and in-laws. Ariana's hands trembled as she opened the folder and saw the address of the Maple Ridge home, the neighborhood she had always loved. She covered her mouth, tears falling, but not from sadness. I placed my hand on her shoulder. "Your way out is secure. No one can corner you." I said it loudly enough for Vivian and Landon to hear. The atmosphere in the hall split in two. Half the room looked at me with admiration. The other half avoided eye contact. Some middle-aged women on the groom's side whispered, pointing at Ariana as if she were ungrateful. Landon looked around, felt the stares, and his eyes darkened. "Ariana, you know I don't like this separate property business. You should have talked to me before." I turned cold and steady. "She doesn't need your permission." A flash of anger crossed his face, brief but unmistakable, enough for me to know the signs of control weren't imagined, they were waiting to grow. Ariana whispered, "Mom, I don't know what to do." "For now, just one thing," I told her, squeezing her hand. "Don't apologize for being protected." The reception continued, but the balance had shifted forever. Congratulations became strained. Vivian's glare could have burned through walls. Landon held Ariana's shoulder tightly. Not lovingly, but warningly. Ariana didn't know that this gift would one day save her life, and I didn't know that from that very moment. The war between our families and the battle inside my daughter had truly begun. I couldn't sleep the night of the wedding. My small house on the outskirts of Kansas City was so quiet I could hear the wall clock ticking. I sat alone on the old sofa, my hands still trembling from what had happened, not just because of Ariana's humiliation, but because I had seen something else. A shadow from my past, something I thought I had buried, resurfacing through a crack in my memory. The image of my sister, Marianne, replayed like a looped film. 25 years of marriage, 25 years of sacrifice, effort, and building a home with the man she trusted. But with one signature on divorce papers she wasn't allowed to read thoroughly, everything vanished. He wiped out everything she contributed, from savings to the house she had painted with her own hands. Then, on a bitter winter afternoon, I stood beside her as he threw her old suitcase onto the porch and slammed the door in our faces. I still remember how her hands shook as she held that suitcase. Inside were only a few clothes, a small picture frame, and her college journal. She sobbed the entire drive back to our mother's house. That was the first time I saw a strong, educated, dignified woman completely shattered for trusting the wrong person. I was 30 then, struggling to raise 2-year-old Ariana. I watched my sister collapse and couldn't do a thing, and I wondered, if someday Ariana faced the same fate, would I let it happen? From that day, I swore my daughter would never enter a marriage without a way out. That vow stayed silent for years until Ariana brought Landon home. I remember that first dinner at my house, a calm autumn evening, maple leaves scattered across the porch. Ariana insisted on cooking to make a good impression, and she truly did. a pan of fragrant lasagna, fresh salad, and an apple pie she made from my recipe. When I opened the door to welcome Landon, he had that broad smile, the kind made for cameras, and a crisp suit like he was interviewing for an important job. He was polite, shook my hand firmly but not too firmly, and said all the right things. But when his eyes swept the kitchen and landed on Ariana bustling around, I saw something else, a hint of entitlement, a kind of satisfied look. I knew that look well. It was the same one my sister's husband used to give her, the look that said, "You should stay in your place." I didn't accuse Landon right away. I observed. I heard him say, "Ariana doesn't need to work so much," not in a caring tone, but as a directive. I noticed he liked making decisions for her, from movie seats to meal choices. Ariana told me he was just a little overprotective, but I knew that wasn't protection. It was possession. Men like that don't hit right away. They begin with small controls, cutting the threads of freedom one by one, until the woman doesn't recognize she's been tied down. Ariana was innocent, kind, trusting, believing love always meant good intentions. I didn't want to crush that innocence, but I knew I had to prepare, and I started with a lawyer. I still remember my slight tremble when I said the first sentence to her, a sharp, composed woman in her 50s. "I want to ask about protecting my daughter's assets after marriage." She asked, "Is there something wrong with her fiancé?" I answered, "I'm not sure, but I can't wait until something is." She nodded as if she had heard this story 100 times. Then she explained everything my sister never knew: separate assets before marriage, legal protections in divorce, and most importantly, how to ensure Ariana's ownership couldn't be touched by Landon or his family. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours. When I walked out of her office, I exhaled deeply, as if I had climbed several flights of stairs. I knew knowledge wasn't enough. I needed action. So I searched for houses in safe, quiet neighborhoods. I visited dozens across Missouri and Kansas. I took notes, photos, interviewed agents. I did everything alone, not telling Ariana, not telling Landon. I said I was busy with extra work, and I was. I took extra shifts at the school library, cleaned classrooms, babysat for a friend's grandchildren to earn more. I even sold my small shares in a local company, the nest egg I planned to keep for retirement, because something more urgent needed protecting. Every time exhaustion hit after a 10-hour day, the memory of my sister surged back as a relentless reminder. I saw her standing outside her locked house, holding that suitcase. I saw her ex-husband's cruel smile. I heard her sobbing, and I told myself, no, Ariana will never live that life, not while I breathe. The Maple Ridge house came almost by accident. One March morning, just after rain cleared, I drove through a neighborhood lined with red maples. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, making everything glow. I stopped when I saw the for sale sign in front of a cream-colored house with pale blue shingles. I walked in and instantly knew. This was Ariana's refuge. Not too big, but warm. A bright little kitchen with a window facing the yard. A back porch perfect for the herb garden she always wanted. I imagined her standing there someday, brewing coffee and breathing in peace I doubted Landon could ever give her. I signed the papers faster than I expected. The deed was written with strict terms. Premarital asset solely in Ariana's name. Protected from marital claims unless she consented in writing. The lawyer praised my preparation. I just smiled. If she knew the real reason, she'd understand why I fought so hard. I locked the documents in my safe. Each time I opened it to check, I felt like I was touching Ariana's invisible armor. A mother can't walk beside her daughter forever, but I could give her the protection I couldn't give my sister. And from early on, long before the wedding, I decided this. If Ariana ever needed a way out, she would have one, a place no one could take from her. I whispered to myself in that quiet house, the clock ticking steadily. My daughter will never be left with nothing. No matter the cost, I won't let that happen. I never expected that vow to be tested sooner than I thought. But at that moment, I knew only one thing. The battle I had quietly prepared for was finally about to begin for real. The house in Maple Ridge became the biggest secret I had ever kept in my life. Every time I drove past that street shaded by those red maple trees, I felt an indescribable peace, as if I were laying bricks for Ariana's future. It was small, bright, quiet, perfect for starting over if her marriage didn't go in the right direction. I wasn't wishing for something bad to happen, but I trusted my intuition, and my intuition had never been wrong when it came to the people I loved. The first morning I stepped into the house, sunlight streamed through the large windows, creating long beams across the wooden floor. The smell of new timber, the crisp suburban air, and the chirping of sparrows perched on the porch roof made my shoulders feel lighter. This was where Ariana could breathe freely, where she wouldn't have to monitor every thought of someone else. A warm kitchen, 2 small but airy bedrooms. I even pictured her placing a reading chair by the east window for weekend mornings. My lawyer handled every detail carefully. The property was registered solely under Ariana's name as a separate asset and could not be merged without her written consent. She read each clause aloud to me, her voice calm but firm. Even if the groom's family applies pressure, they cannot touch this house. I nodded, feeling as though I had just lifted a tremendous weight off my chest. But worry never disappears completely. I tucked the documents into a navy blue folder, Ariana's favorite color, and brought them home. That evening, under the warm glow of the living room lamp, I placed everything into my safe. The small click when the door shut felt like a second vow to protect my daughter at all costs. Not even my closest friend knew about the house. I didn't dare tell anyone, not wanting any rumor or accident to expose the secret. I knew I was walking a thin line. If Landon heard anything by chance, he might tighten his grip on Ariana before I could act. That caution kept me awake many nights, especially the night before the wedding. The later it got, the faster my heart pounded. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling as images from the past and future spun around each other. I wanted to believe I was overthinking, that Ariana would be happy. But then I remembered the times Landon spoke to her as if shaping her thoughts. I remembered his half smile whenever she asked permission to do something as simple as going to a movie with friends. And I remembered the way he looked across the dinner table the first time our families met, assessing, weighing, then smiling in satisfaction when Ariana hurried to pour him water before she even sat down. Ariana didn't see it. She thought it was just a little too much affection. But I believed Landon didn't love Ariana's gentleness. He loved her compliance. He wanted a wife who knew her place, who performed her role, who stayed quiet when he spoke. I had seen men like that before, and I knew they were most dangerous when they believed they were doing the right thing. I took the envelope I had prepared out of the drawer. Inside was a copy of the deed to the Maple Ridge house, the gift I planned to give Ariana privately after the wedding. I had intended to keep it as a last resort, something to use only when she truly needed it. But the more I held the envelope, the more I felt a growing, vague fear inside my chest. Fear that if I didn't speak soon, it might be too late. I held the envelope, set it down, picked it up again over and over, like I was weighing my own anxiety. I didn't want to ruin her special day, but I also didn't want her entering marriage unprepared. I wondered whether I was being too suspicious. Then I thought of Marianne, my sister, standing outside her locked house with her only suitcase, and the answer became clear. I put the envelope in my handbag and told myself that whatever happened the next day, I had to give it to Ariana, publicly or privately, depending on the moment. I didn't know if it was right or wrong, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. The next morning, the wedding unfolded like any other. Flowers, music, blessings, and polite hugs between two families who clearly didn't match. Vivian looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Hair perfectly coiffed, a sapphire blue fitted dress, a smile so bright I couldn't decipher her real feelings. But when her eyes landed on me, I sensed something sharp. A discomforting message that Ariana now belonged to their family. I stayed quiet, simply observing. Vivian constantly adjusted Ariana's dress, tugging the hem, repositioning her hands, whispering instructions like a strict instructor. The way she touched Ariana made me uneasy, but Ariana just smiled gently, thinking it was care from a new mother-in-law. I held myself together, keeping all emotion inside, until the moment Vivian brought the gift box onto the stage. I never thought she would do it in front of everyone. When the lid opened and the cheap apron with its insulting message appeared under the lights, I realized the moment I feared most had arrived. Not because of the gift itself, but because it confirmed everything I had sensed about the Clark family. Ariana was humiliated without understanding why. Landon looked at the gift without reacting like a loving husband would. Vivian stood at a distance, arms crossed, lips curled slightly as if delivering a clear message. Your daughter is here to serve us. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The envelope in my bag felt hot. I stood, walked onto the stage, and gave Ariana the protection I had been preparing for months. I don't regret making it public. Not for a single second. And I knew that from that moment on, the battle between me and the Clark family had officially begun. A battle whose intensity I could not yet measure. But one I was ready for. Because nothing in this world terrifies me more than seeing my daughter pushed into a corner. Watching Ariana clutch the deed in her hands, her shoulders trembling yet her eyes bright amidst the chaos of the wedding, I felt as if I had pulled her away from an invisible cliff. The hall buzzed with murmurs, judgmental looks dug into my back, but I stood firm. I knew I had done nothing wrong. A mother cannot choose whom her daughter loves, but a mother can give her the key to survival. And I had done just that. I couldn't know what Ariana's future would hold, but I knew one thing. From that day on, whatever happened, my daughter would never be left with nothing. She had a place that belonged to her, and no one could take it from her. I looked toward Vivian at the end of the aisle. She stood frozen, her stare like a challenge. I met her gaze calmly. The battle had begun, and I wasn't afraid. After that chaotic wedding, when Ariana and Landon left for their honeymoon in Seattle and then Vancouver, I hoped she might find a little peace before facing the complexities of married life. But just 2 days after their plane took off, my phone buzzed very late at night. Ariana's message appeared on the screen like a choked breath. Mom, I don't understand why Landon changed so quickly. He's so cold, irritated, but he won't say why. I sat up, my heart tightening. That wasn't the voice of a newlywed enjoying happiness. It was the voice of someone trying to understand what had just shifted beneath her feet. I called immediately. When Ariana answered, I heard her confusion clearly. Did I do something wrong, Mom? Since last night, Landon's been distant. I asked if he was okay, and he just said, nothing, then walked away. He's barely spoken to me all day. I didn't need to think long. I knew exactly why. Landon was angry that he couldn't control his wife's assets, angry that his plan, or rather his family's plan, had been ruined from the start. Men like Landon don't explode in rage. They punish through silence, through a coldness that makes the other person blame themselves. I didn't tell Ariana that. She wasn't ready. I only said gently, you didn't do anything wrong. Just remember, his emotions are not your responsibility. Ariana fell silent for a moment, then added, there's something else. Today Landon asked me if we should sell the new house. He said it'd be easier if we combined finances. I closed my eyes. Not surprised, just disappointed. That is the first step in every financial control story I've ever seen. I replied firmly, Ariana, listen carefully. You absolutely must not sign or agree to sell anything, at least not now. She spoke softly, as if afraid Landon might hear. I thought it didn't make sense either. The house is mine from before the wedding, but he talked like it's my duty to contribute to the new family. I tightened my grip on the phone. You don't owe anyone any duty. If he brings it up again, just say your mother wants you to keep the house. You don't need to justify anything else. Ariana sighed, a sound that held both exhaustion and relief. In the days that followed, Ariana sent messages that pierced my heart. This morning I woke up and saw him checking my phone. He asked why I text you so much. I changed my Instagram password and he kept asking why. I put my phone down, my chest burning. Not because Ariana was having a terrible honeymoon, but because I recognized the exact downward slope that had dragged my sister into tragedy. Monitoring phones, monitoring accounts, monitoring time, monitoring breath. I called Ariana, but she only whispered, "Don't worry, Mom. Maybe he just wants to be closer. We just got married." I heard the self-soothing clearly, like someone patching a sinking boat. I wanted to tell her that Landon was crossing boundaries. I wanted to tell her to come home immediately. But that's easier said than done. When people love, they view warnings through the eyes of hope. I only said, if you feel uncomfortable, that feeling matters. No one has the right to invade your privacy, Ariana. One afternoon while I was watering the roses, my phone rang. The screen showed Vivian. I knew this call would come sooner or later. I answered calmly, "Hello, Vivian." On the other end, I heard a sharp exhale, as if she had been harboring anger for days. "Helena, you ruined everything. Why did you make that scene with the property at the wedding? Ariana is unsettled now, and Landon is deeply hurt." I leaned back in my chair, looking up at the clear sky. "Vivian, I didn't ruin anything. I only ruined your plan." Silence. Then her voice rose. "What are you talking about?" "I'm saying that if you bring an apron to humiliate my daughter at her own wedding, I have every right to protect her right there. Ariana is a human being, not a servant." Vivian clenched her jaw so hard I could hear her anger through the phone. "You're mistaken. It was just a family joke." I've lived long enough to know which jokes are harmless and which ones have intention. I paused, then my tone sharpened. "And I know what you want from Ariana." Vivian didn't respond to that. Instead, she attacked me. "She hasn't thought about the Clark family at all since she got that property. You're planting conflict in their new marriage." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. If a single piece of paper with Ariana's name on it is enough to cause conflict, then the problem isn't me. Vivian hung up abruptly. I sat for a long moment, completely unmoved. The battle had begun exactly as I expected, and Vivian wasn't used to losing. When the honeymoon ended, Ariana returned, looking almost the same, but her eyes were different. She avoided meeting my gaze when she hugged me at the airport. That was the clearest sign of all. Ariana was hiding something. Landon appeared with his usual polished look, but his smile was no longer relaxed. It was tight, strained, and I knew he was trying to prove that everything was fine. On the drive to their new home, I noticed Landon constantly trying to answer on Ariana's behalf. When I asked her whether the trip was fun, Landon said, "It was great, just a little tiring." I asked Ariana which place she liked most. He quickly chimed in, "We liked Vancouver the most." I looked at Ariana through the rearview mirror. She was staring out the window, her hands folded together as if she were comforting herself. In the weeks that followed, Ariana called me often, but her voice changed a little every day. No more excitement, no more telling me every little thing. Instead, she spoke in a quiet voice. "Landon wants me to change how I dress. He says I'm not dressing in the right standard for the Clark family. He says I don't need to see my best friends so much. He doesn't like when I wear bold makeup. He gets upset when I call you a lot." My heart twisted with every word. Those demands weren't loud like thunder, but they were a steady rain eroding Ariana's freedom little by little. And the scariest part was that Ariana didn't see it yet. She let out a weak laugh over the phone. "Maybe it's just because we're newlyweds and he's a bit particular, Mom." But I knew that laugh was only a veil covering her hurt. Ariana was starting to feel afraid, but she wasn't ready to admit that she might have chosen the wrong man. She had invested too much hope into this love. She didn't want to start over. She didn't want to hear anyone say, "Mom was right." I didn't say anything more. A mother cannot force her child to acknowledge what they're not ready to see. But I held the phone in my hand for a long time after Ariana hung up, my eyes drifting toward Maple Ridge, the place my daughter could run to when the storm truly arrived, and I felt that storm was coming very soon. I had hoped that after the turbulent honeymoon, Ariana and Landon would move into the apartment they once talked about. But instead, Landon made a decision that froze my blood the moment Ariana told me. He moved her into his parents' home, the large house on Polar Avenue. Ariana spoke with a voice trying hard to sound optimistic. "Just for a few months, Mom, to save money. The Clark house is big. Vivian said she'll help me learn how to be a wife." I stiffened. The phrase, "learn how to be a wife," reminded me of old stories where women were trained to obey as if it were a natural duty. But I didn't want to unsettle Ariana more, so I asked, "Are you sure you're comfortable with that?" Ariana gave a small forced smile. "I guess it's okay for now." Just that, but I clearly heard the fear behind that laugh. The house on Polar Avenue looked like an old mansion. Red brick walls, a large black front door, wide railings. Every time I visited Ariana, I felt as if I were stepping into a place that didn't belong to this era. It wasn't the grandeur that bothered me. It was the feeling of being watched from every corner. Ariana lived on the second floor, in a room Vivian chose. And from the very first time I entered, I sensed the tension between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law stretched tight like a string. Ariana was peeling carrots in the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly. Landon leaned against the doorframe, pretending everything was normal, but Vivian didn't bother hiding her coldness. "Oh, Helena, you're here. I suppose you want to see your daughter learning housework?" I looked at Ariana, her face pale, dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. She had just finished an 8-hour day at the office, yet she had to cook and clean a kitchen the size of a small restaurant. I didn't react immediately. I walked closer and gently touched her hand. "Are you okay?" Ariana smiled, but her lips trembled as if struggling to hold a fragile mask together. "I'm okay, Mom. Just a little tired." But I knew she was being forced. They were testing how far her obedience would go. In the weeks that followed, every time I visited, Ariana looked more worn out. She had lost weight, her eyes more hollow, her voice softer. When I asked, she only said, "I need to try my best to blend in with his family." I wanted to tell her marriage isn't an obedience exam, but when I looked at Ariana, I saw she was clinging desperately to excuses just to endure. She thought, "If I try a little harder, things will get better." But reality was the opposite. Vivian pushed harder with each passing week. Every time I was there, she made snide remarks. "Ariana still doesn't know how to bake like the women in the Clark family. Landon likes things neat, but Ariana is a bit slow. These days, women shouldn't work so much. They should focus on taking care of their husbands." I listened, flames rising inside me, but I stayed calm. I knew that if I retaliated too strongly, Ariana, not I, would pay the price. One time, as I was about to leave, Vivian came closer and whispered loudly enough for me to hear. "I know you think we're pressuring Ariana, but the truth is, she needs guidance to fit into this family." I replied softly but sharply, "Ariana doesn't need to change to fit anyone. She's already the kindest person in this house." Vivian stared at me as if I had thrown a bomb into the living room, but I didn't care. I finally understood their strategy. Isolate Ariana from outside support, making her believe they were the only real family she had, and Landon's control grew harsher each day. Ariana told me he changed the Wi-Fi password and only gave it to her after she asked him 3 times. Another day, Ariana discovered the joint bank account, something Landon suggested for convenience, had its login email changed by him. When she asked, he said, "I just want to keep the budget organized. You don't need to see everything." I listened, the blood in my veins turning cold. Controlling the phone, controlling social media, then controlling the bank account. All of these match the behavioral pattern I had seen in domestic abuse cases at the Women's Center where I volunteered. And Ariana grew more anxious by the day. She cried often without knowing why. One night she called me at 10 p.m., her voice choked. "Mom, I feel like I'm disappearing. I don't recognize myself anymore." I wanted to drive over immediately and take her away, but she said, "I can't leave, Mom. Landon will be upset. I don't want to disappoint him." I sat in the dark living room, my hand tightening so much my knuckles turned white. I remembered my sister saying the exact same thing years ago. "He's just stressed. I just need to try a little harder." But trying harder doesn't fix a man who already wants to control you. I decided to visit Ariana unannounced. When I arrived at the house on Polar Avenue, I saw her scrubbing the living room floor, her back bent, hair tied loosely. The house was far too big for her 2 hands. I heard Vivian shouting from upstairs, "Ariana, make sure you clean under the table legs. This household isn't used to careless work." Ariana lowered her head and whispered yes. I stood there, my heart aching as if it were being crushed. I knelt beside her and whispered, "Come home with me for a few days. You need rest." But Ariana immediately shook her head. "I can't, Mom. Landon will think I'm disrespecting his mother. He doesn't like when I leave the house without asking." I was speechless. She no longer recognized the abnormality in that sentence. She was beginning to believe every decision she made needed approval from her husband and from Vivian. I touched her shoulder. "Ariana, you don't need anyone's permission to breathe." She turned to me, eyes red. She tried to smile, but failed. "If love feels like this, what kind of love is it, Mom?" Her question nearly made me cry on the spot, but I inhaled deeply, keeping calm so I wouldn't make her panic. That night, I went home with a heaviness that felt like carrying the entire Polar Avenue house on my back. I stood before my safe, staring at the Maple Ridge deed. I wanted to take Ariana there, immediately, to free her from that toxic environment, but I knew I couldn't. Ariana wasn't ready. Women being controlled often need one final breaking point before they awaken, and Ariana was still clinging to the fragile hope that her marriage would improve. I placed my hand on the safe and whispered to myself, "The worst hasn't happened yet." I never said that to anyone, but I could feel it in every fiber of my being. A breaking point was approaching. Something bigger, darker, something that could completely erase Ariana if I didn't pull her back in time. And as the shadows of Polar Avenue began to envelop my daughter, I understood that the real battle was still ahead. The news of Ariana's pregnancy came to me on a morning still heavy with dew. She called, her voice trembling, not from fear, but from hope. A faint hope that the baby would become a bridge that could save her sinking marriage. "Mom, I have news." I had heard thousands of joyful voices in my life, but never one that carried so much quiet desperation. I'm pregnant. I gripped the phone, my heart tightening and opening at the same time. "Are you sure? How long has it been?" "I just found out yesterday. I was going to wait until the weekend to tell you, but Mom, I think Landon will calm down now. With the baby, he won't be so tense anymore. Maybe things will get better." My heart ached. Many women had said the same thing, believing a child would make a man cherish them more. But a man who already craves control becomes even more controlling when he knows there's another life binding you to him. I kept my voice steady. "Sweetheart, I'm happy for you. But remember this, you're the mother of this child, and you have the right to decide everything for yourself and your baby." Ariana let out a soft laugh. "I know, Mom, but I want to believe Landon will change." I didn't respond. Hope can be a silk scarf covering the sharpest shards, but that fragile hope lasted only 2 days. Ariana texted me, "Mom, Landon just talked to me. He said now that we have a baby coming, we should settle down by selling the Maple Ridge house. He said the money from the sale would help us build a secure future." I felt a cold wave run through my whole body. That wasn't love. That was strategy. A calculated plan wrapped in the disguise of providing for the family. I asked, "And what did you say?" Ariana was silent for a few seconds before answering. I said, "I wasn't ready, but Landon wasn't happy. He said leaving the house empty was a waste." I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "You cannot sell it. Do not sign anything." Ariana exhaled. "I know. But Mom, Vivian is pushing me too. She gave me some paperwork and said it was just administrative forms." I closed my eyes. The phrase administrative forms coming from someone like Vivian could never be harmless. The very next day, I drove to Polar Avenue. Ariana greeted me with tired eyes, faint purple circles under them, something I had never seen on her radiant face before. "Vivian told me to sign this," Ariana said, handing me a stack of papers. I opened it and instantly wanted to tear it apart. It was a property transfer form, disguised as a family procedure. The last line read, "The transferring party agrees to transfer full ownership of the property into the marital estate." Once she signed it, Ariana would lose everything, and Landon and his family could legally claim ownership. I set the papers down on the kitchen counter and spoke each word clearly. "Ariana, you cannot sign this. This is a trap." Ariana bit her lip. "But Mom, Vivian said if I don't sign, I'm disrespecting the family, and Landon said he's disappointed that I'm not cooperative." I held her hand. It was cold as ice. "You don't owe them any cooperation. This is your house. You have the right to keep it." Ariana lowered her head. A tear fell onto the table. "I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared that if I don't sign, Landon will get mad." I kissed her forehead gently. "That fear isn't because you've done anything wrong. It's because they're trying to make you believe you have no other choice." I decided to take Ariana to see the attorney the very next day, whether Landon agreed or not. She sat in the back seat, her hands wrapped around her stomach as if protecting the baby who had yet to see the light of day, but was already being pulled into a battle that wasn't its fault. The attorney reviewed the documents, then pushed them back toward us, her voice firm. "Ariana is not required to sign anything. This property is entirely her separate asset. No one, not her husband nor her mother-in-law, has the right to demand it be merged into marital property without her consent." Ariana looked up, her eyes widening. "So, I have the right to keep everything as it is?" "You don't just have the right," the attorney said. "You should keep it." Something changed in Ariana's eyes, a new awareness, a small but significant awakening. Landon didn't care. Vivian wasn't guiding her. They were trying to take what belonged to her. On the drive home, Ariana squeezed my hand tightly. "Mom, maybe I've been wrong." I didn't want her to blame herself. It's not wrong to love the wrong person. What's wrong is knowing and doing nothing, and you're correcting it now. But that awakening hadn't even taken root before the storm hit. Landon found out Ariana went to see an attorney. That night, a call came from Ariana, but it wasn't her usual voice. It was the sound of ragged breath, breaking between sobs. "Mom, he found out. He's furious." I heard things crashing behind her, then Landon's roar. "You went behind my back? You let your mother make decisions in my house?" I froze from head to toe. Ariana tried to speak through her tears. "He threw my phone. He threw a vase. He said I'm not allowed to leave the house. Mom, I'm scared." I shot up from the chair, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear every beat in my ears. "Ariana, listen to me. You need to leave now. Leave right now." She sobbed. "I can't get out. He's blocking the door." My breath caught. I heard Landon shout, "Hang up!" I said, "Hang up!" Then the line went dead. For a few seconds, I stood completely frozen. Then a fire ignited inside me, stronger than fear, stronger than reason. I grabbed my car keys, barely remembered to throw on a coat, and ran out the door. The night wind hit my face like ice, but I felt nothing except the image of my daughter, terrified, clutching her stomach, trying to shield the child she hadn't even met. There are moments in a mother's life when hesitation is impossible, and this was one of those moments. I sped into the night, my heart beating as if it might burst. I decided, no more waiting. I couldn't even remember how I drove to Polar Avenue. The dark road, the long shadows from the trees stretching across the pavement. It all felt like it was pushing me toward the house where my daughter was crying for help. The cold night wind slapped against my face, but all I felt was a suffocating dread tightening my chest. Ariana's phone still wouldn't connect. Every time the screen flashed, unable to connect, it was another knife twisting into my fear. I kept calling. The 10th time, the 11th, still nothing. I knew something was wrong. I felt it with every instinct of a mother who'd witnessed too much injustice in her lifetime. When my car turned onto the street in front of the Clark house, the entire block seemed swallowed in darkness. The large house stood rigid and silent, with a few windows dimly lit. But even that light felt cold. I stopped the car at the gate, my heart pounding so loudly it echoed in my ears. I rang the bell. Vivian opened the door after a few seconds, her face showing no surprise, as if she had expected me. "Helena? Why are you here at this hour?" I ignored her tone. "I need to see Ariana." Vivian crossed her arms, blocking the entrance like a wall of arrogance. "At this hour? Ariana is resting. It's not convenient." She didn't answer her phone. Maybe she's asleep. I rarely lost my temper so quickly, but that night I had no patience for politeness. "Move aside, I need to see my daughter." Vivian raised an eyebrow, giving a bitter smile. "Helena, this is my house. Your daughter is someone's wife now. You can't just come in whenever you want." I stepped forward, lowering my voice. I heard my daughter crying because she was being threatened. "I'm going inside to make sure she's safe." Vivian grabbed my arm, this time with more force. "You are not allowed. If you cause trouble, I'll call the police." "Good," I said. "Call them. Let them see where Ariana is and what condition she's in." Vivian hesitated. Her confidence cracked for a split second, and that moment told me everything. Something had happened to Ariana, and they were trying to hide it. I ran toward the side entrance that led directly upstairs. Vivian lunged after me, trying to yank my arm, but I pulled away. "Move, Vivian. I'm not leaving until I see Ariana." I looked up and shouted, "Ariana! Ariana, can you hear me?" No answer, but faintly I heard a soft thud from far away and a muffled sob. I knew that sound instantly. I turned to Vivian. "Where is Ariana?" Vivian stood rigid, lips pressed tight, eyes shifting away. She didn't answer. And that silence told me more than any words. I had no choice. I called emergency services and reported that someone was locked in a room, possibly in danger, a pregnant woman potentially being held against her will. Vivian shrieked, enraged. "You're insane. This is a private family matter." I stared straight at her. "Ariana is my family." 10 minutes later, which felt longer than an hour, the emergency team arrived. When they insisted on checking upstairs, Vivian screamed threats about suing me, suing them, suing anyone who stepped inside her house. But faced with their firmness and with me standing there, never taking my eyes off her, Vivian was forced to step aside. They led us upstairs. When the living room door opened, I heard Ariana's voice, faint like a child's. "Mom, I'm here." It was a moment I will never forget. The bedroom door was locked from the outside. Landon had changed the lock, not a standard deadbolt. The emergency team had to use professional tools to break it open. Every metallic click felt like a hammer striking my heart. I imagined Ariana sitting alone in the dark, her body starting to change, trapped by her own husband like an object discarded in a corner. The door burst open. Ariana was curled in the corner, still in wrinkled pajamas. Her eyes were swollen, her face puffy, her hair disheveled, her hands wrapped around her stomach as if shielding the baby from the world. When she saw me, she broke down into sobs. Mom, I was so scared. I thought he was going to hurt me." I rushed to her, pulling her into my arms. Her shoulders shook violently. I had never seen Ariana so fragile, the once strong, independent young woman, now like a tiny bird plucked bare in a storm. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here now. I'm taking you home." Ariana clung to me, trembling. "Don't make me stay here. Mom, I can't take it anymore." But before we could stand, Landon appeared in the doorway like a shadow. He stepped in quickly, his face flushed red, his voice shouting, "Ariana, where are you going? You are not allowed to leave this house." I stood in front of her. "She's leaving with me. She's not staying here another minute tonight." Landon roared, "You have no right. Ariana is my wife." Ariana sobbed and clutched my shirt. "I want to go home with you. I'm begging you, Mom." I looked straight at Landon, my voice colder than I expected from myself. "Landon, you no longer have the right to decide anything." Vivian appeared behind him, shouting even louder, "Helena, you will regret this. You cannot just take a pregnant woman out of her husband's home. You are destroying her family." I didn't turn back. Any family that locks a pregnant daughter-in-law up all night is no longer a family. I helped Ariana stand. She nearly collapsed into me, her legs weak from exhaustion. 2 rescue workers helped me bring her downstairs. Landon tried to follow, but one of them held him back to prevent chaos. When we reached the doorway, Landon screamed, his voice cracking with rage. "Ariana, you are my wife. You must come back." Ariana covered her ears, crying uncontrollably. I turned back and said my final words before stepping through the door. "She does not belong in a place that terrifies her." On the way to my house, Ariana rested her head on my shoulder, crying without making a sound. I let her cry. Sometimes tears are the only way a person survives a shock like that. I stroked her hair and spoke softly but firmly. "From now on, you are not going back to the Clark house. You will stay here, with me." Ariana gripped my hand, as if holding on to the only lifeline in a stormy sea. "Mom, I'm not going back. I can't. I'm too scared." I kissed her tear-damp hair. "It's all right. You made the right choice." And in that moment, with the steady hum of the engine and streetlights streaking past on both sides, I understood more clearly than ever. The legal battle between me and the Clark family was no longer a possibility. It was a certainty. But I also knew this. With Ariana beside me, and with the truth as clear as daylight, they would not easily defeat us. The morning after that fateful night, Ariana slept in her old childhood bed. Soft sunlight filtered through the curtains onto her eyes, still swollen from crying. I stood at the doorway looking at my grown daughter curled up like a small creature that had just escaped a cage. Her hand rested on her stomach, a reflex to protect the baby she hadn't even had the chance to fully love yet. I knew I couldn't let another day pass in uncertainty. Everything had to begin immediately. I prepared a light breakfast, then gently woke Ariana. "Sweetheart, we need to see the attorney." Ariana opened her eyes, looking at me with hesitation. The fear from last night still lingered in them. "Mom, do we really need to go this far?" I knelt beside the bed and held her fragile hand. "Ariana, last night wasn't the first time, and if you go back, it won't be the last. You're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting your baby." Ariana bit her lip, then she nodded softly. A small nod, but full of courage. The meeting at the attorney's office took place in a quiet room with beige walls and thick rows of files. Ariana sat close to me, her hands clasped so tightly they turned pale. The attorney, who had helped me protect the Maple Ridge house, looked at Ariana with gentle but serious eyes. "I'm very sorry for what you've been through," she said. But the best thing you can do for yourself and your baby is to leave that man permanently." Ariana lowered her head, a tear sliding down. But this time, it wasn't from weakness. It was from truth settling into place. The attorney continued, "We will file for divorce with valid grounds, controlling behavior, unlawful confinement, threats, endangering a pregnant woman. And I recommend that you both file for a restraining order today." Ariana looked up. Restraining order? It means that starting today, he cannot approach you within a certain distance, cannot contact you, cannot show up where you live. If he violates it, the police will intervene immediately. Ariana looked at me, and for the first time in many months, I saw a little light returning to her eyes. Not happiness, but hope. "Let's do it," she whispered. And so the petition was filed that same morning. What I didn't expect was that Landon's reaction would come as fast as a storm. Just hours after the divorce papers reached his attorney's office, Ariana's phone buzzed nonstop. More than 20 missed calls. Then messages, long and full of contradictions. "What are you doing? You are my wife." "Don't destroy our family. If you come back this afternoon, I'll forgive everything. You'll regret defying me. Don't let this go too far. I'm sorry. Just come home." Apologies mixed with threats. Exactly like the men I had seen in domestic violence case files. Ariana read each line with trembling hands. "Mom, why is he like this? Why is he begging one moment and threatening the next?" I placed my hand on her back. "Because when he loses control over you, he loses the only thing that makes him feel powerful. This isn't love, sweetheart. This is power." Ariana broke into tears. This time, I let her cry longer. She needed it. Vivian didn't cry. She fought a different way. With words. The next day, she called me, her voice sharp as a blade cutting through the phone. "Helena, you destroyed your daughter's family. You're filling her head with lies so she'll leave my son." I remained calm, as always. "I didn't destroy anything. Ariana made her own decision because she was terrified of your son." "Landon loves Ariana." "Loves her? He locked up his pregnant wife all night. That was a private matter. Who gave you the right to interfere?" "I'm Ariana's mother," I said firmly. "And if I hadn't interfered, you might have lost your grandchild." Vivian went silent for a beat, then screamed, "I will sue you for manipulating my daughter-in-law into turning against us." I replied slowly, "I have enough evidence to sue you back. Would you like to try?" She hung up. I knew she wouldn't give up easily, but I was no longer the woman who once just stood and watched. Meanwhile, Ariana gradually realized that returning to Landon was not part of a safe future. She told me one evening as we prepared dinner, "Mom, I think I understand now. All the sweetness, all the care before, it was just a shell. If I go back, I'll have nothing left. Not just me, the baby too." I hugged her, my heart both aching and relieved. "You finally see it clearly, Ariana. I'm proud of you." A few days later, the temporary restraining order was approved. Ariana almost collapsed when she received the official notice. "Mom, he can't come near me now, right?" "For now, yes, but you still have to stay alert. A restraining order isn't a steel wall, but it's the first step to protecting yourself." I printed one copy and taped it to the door. Another went into Ariana's purse. Another to the attorney. I didn't miss a single step. The Clark family didn't give up easily. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. A man's voice introducing himself as their representative attorney. "Mrs. Helena, my clients are willing to negotiate. If Ariana agrees to return, they are prepared to offer asset exchanges to avoid legal conflict. I understood immediately. They wanted to buy her silence and regain control. I only said 3 words. No, absolutely not. He tried to persuade me. They promise a better life for her. No, I cut him off. Ariana is not an object. I hung up. After that, I began gathering every piece of evidence. Nothing was allowed to slip through. All of Landon's threatening messages, photos of the door locked from the outside, the audio recording of Ariana crying that night. Ariana's written notes about episodes of control. The rescue team's report confirming forced entry. I compiled everything into a folder, nearly as thick as a book, and just looking at it sent a chill down my spine. This was no longer suspicion. This was truth. Ariana looked at the folder, her hand gently resting on her stomach. Mom, I don't want my child to grow up in fear. I squeezed her hand. You're doing the best thing you can for your baby. Landon's messages shifted slowly from pleading to open threats. You will pay for embarrassing me. I won't let your mother destroy us. You won't escape. Ariana grew pale reading them. I wasn't surprised anymore. When a controlling man loses power, he shows his real nature. I looked out the window, the late winter sky heavy and gray, and I knew the legal battle was no longer something that might happen. It had already begun. There was no way back. There was no room for compromise. There was only my daughter and me, and the truth. On the day we stepped into the courthouse, the sky was a heavy gray, as if signaling the weight of the milestone we were about to face. I held Ariana's hand tightly as we walked down the long hallway, where the neon lights reflected off the cold tile floor. My daughter carried a strange calmness, not because she was no longer afraid, but because she had finally decided to confront everything. In her hands was the folder of evidence that our attorney and I had spent weeks preparing. There was no more forced smile, no more panicked eyes, only the resoluteness I had been waiting to see. When we entered the courtroom, Landon was already there. He wore a black suit, his hair slicked back meticulously, trying to project an image of sophistication. But in his eyes was a storm barely contained. Vivian sat beside him, arms crossed, her gaze drilling into us as if we had betrayed the universe itself. They weren't here to explain. They were here to fight. Ariana sat down and gently placed a hand on her stomach. I saw Landon glance at it, his eyes flickering. Not with emotion, but like someone who had just lost an object he believed belonged to him. The judge entered. Everyone rose, then sat in solemn silence. At the start of the hearing, Ariana's attorney presented the request for divorce, custody, the restraining order, and the confirmation of separate property. Then she gently asked Ariana to recount everything. I looked at my daughter. She inhaled deeply. Her shoulders trembled, but her voice was clear. Your Honor, I have endured control and threats from my husband for months. He checked my phone, controlled my accounts, and locked me inside the bedroom on the night I was 3 months pregnant. The room stirred. Landon clenched his jaw, and Vivian shot to her feet. That is not true. She is making this up just to keep the house Helena gave her. That woman... The judge slammed the gavel sharply. Mrs. Clark, sit down. If you interrupt again, I will have you removed from the courtroom. Vivian trembled with fury but sat. Ariana continued, her voice small but steadier now. I cried all night. I called my mother because I feared for myself and my baby. When she arrived, they refused to let her in. The rescue team had to break the door. Our attorney immediately presented photos of the locked door, the rescue team's report, and the recording of Ariana calling for help. Each piece of evidence sliced through the illusion of a perfect family that Landon and Vivian had built. Then it was Landon's attorney's turn. He stepped forward confidently. "Your Honor, Ariana has been influenced by her mother's excessive interference. Her mother, Mrs. Helena, has never liked the Clark family. Ariana leaving in the middle of the night was merely a temporary misunderstanding. Landon did not lock her in. The locked door was due to what?" the judge asked. The attorney hesitated for a second. "A technical malfunction." A few quiet scoffs rippled across the room. I looked at Landon. His face was flushed, but he tried to appear calm, even as his hands curled into fists. Then came the cross-examination. Our attorney questioned him directly. "Mr. Clark, is it true that you repeatedly asked your wife to sell the house in her name to combine finances?" Landon answered casually, "Of course. That's what normal married couples do." "Is it true that you changed the Wi-Fi password and the login for the joint bank account without informing Ariana?" Landon shrugged defiantly. "I'm the husband. I have the right." The room fell instantly silent. His sentence hung there. A confession without needing a lawyer. Our attorney pushed further. "You say you have the right because you are the husband?" "Yes. And is that why you locked your pregnant wife in the bedroom?" Landon screamed. "I did not lock her. She was the one disrespecting her husband." His outburst made Ariana flinch. A few observers shook their heads. The judge raised an eyebrow and took notes. Vivian lunged forward and grabbed her son's arm. "Landon, calm down. They're trapping you." But it was too late. Everyone had seen who he truly was. When the judge gave her preliminary remarks, I saw Ariana sit up straighter. My daughter, who had once been too afraid to step outside her bedroom, now looked forward like someone waking from a long nightmare. The judge spoke clearly. "The evidence supports the existence of controlling behavior, threats, and unlawful confinement. My decision is based not only on the plaintiff's testimony, but also on the defendant's attitude during today's hearing." Landon bowed his head. Vivian covered her mouth, horrified. Then the judge continued. "The court rules as follows. Divorce is granted. Ariana Foster Clark is awarded full custody without conditions. The defendant, Landon Clark, is subject to a restraining order as determined by the court. The plaintiff retains all property in her own name, including the home received prior to marriage. The defendant must complete a 12-month behavioral control and anger management program." Ariana burst into tears, but this time they were tears of liberation. I wrapped my arms around her right there in the courtroom, ignoring everyone else. Her body trembled against me, not from fear, but from the release of finally being free. Landon turned away, his shoulders tense. He did not look at Ariana, nor at me. Vivian shrank back into her seat, as if watching the entire tower of control she had built collapse in a single morning. As we left the courthouse, Ariana held my hand tightly. The wind swept through the hallway, lifting her hair while the midday sunlight cast a warm glow on the pavement below. "Mom?" "Yes, sweetheart. I never thought I'd live to see this day. I thought my life was locked forever." I slipped my arm around her shoulders. "No one stays locked forever, sweetheart. The moment you stepped out of that room that night, you unlocked the first door." Ariana leaned her head against me. "Mom, I can finally breathe. I feel alive again." "That's right." I brushed her hair gently. "Today you were reborn." On the courthouse steps, I held Ariana for a very long time. That embrace wasn't just a mother shielding her child. It was the embrace of two women who had walked through agony and emerged into the light. An embrace I had waited months to give, and I knew the biggest battle was over, and the healing, the real journey, was just beginning. Ariana gave birth to baby Emerson on a late autumn morning when yellow leaves swayed outside the hospital window. I stood beside her bed, holding her hand through more than 8 hours of labor. When Emerson's first cry echoed through the room, my body went weak, as if a lifelong burden had finally lifted, and tears ran down my face before I realized it. Ariana held her baby to her chest, her hair damp against her forehead, her voice trembling with emotion. "Mom, look, this is my baby." I leaned down and touched the tiny hand reaching into the air. That little hand found my finger and wrapped around it, as if recognizing me from another lifetime. Emerson, the gift life had given Ariana after so much pain. I whispered, "Welcome to this world, Emerson. God sent you at the perfect time." Ariana broke into tears, but this time, not from fear or suffering, from pure joy. The first weeks of being a single mother were not easy. Ariana had to recover physically, learn how to care for a newborn, and endure sleepless nights. Some nights I woke to Emerson's cries and found Ariana sitting at the edge of the bed, rocking the baby softly, dark circles under her eyes. "Are you all right?" I asked. Ariana gave a tired smile. "I'm fine, just overwhelmed sometimes. But I feel free, Mom. For the first time in years, I can breathe." I put an arm around her shoulders. "Yes, sweetheart, you're finally living your own life." At Maple Ridge, the little house I once bought with trembling fear had become a home full of laughter and new life. Emerson grew each day with big brown eyes that looked so much like Ariana's. Every morning as I brewed coffee and watched the two of them on the porch, I felt profoundly grateful for the decision I had made years ago. 3 months after giving birth, Ariana started job hunting again. I stayed home with Emerson, changing diapers, making bottles, taking the baby on strolls around the neighborhood. The neighbors grew used to seeing an older woman pushing a stroller, chatting and laughing because Emerson always babbled back at me. Ariana soon found a better position than before, a marketing role at a local company. Her new boss, a seasoned woman, asked in the interview, "You're a single mom, I understand. We'll accommodate you. No need to over-explain." Ariana left that interview with tears in her eyes, not from fear, but from being treated with respect. Her finances improved. She began investing in the home, a new sofa, cream-colored curtains, a rocking chair for me to sit and soothe Emerson each evening. Everything slowly fell into place. Emerson and I became inseparable. If I left the room for just a minute, he would turn his head looking for me. Ariana often watched us with a smile. "Mom, you're the anchor for both of us. Without you, I don't think I would have made it this far." I shook my head gently. "No, Ariana, you're stronger than you think." But in my heart, I knew this. It was the pain she had survived that forged that strength in her. The day Emerson learned to roll over, I was the first to cheer. The day Emerson babbled, "Mama," Ariana cried her eyes out. The day Emerson laughed out loud for the first time, the whole house lit up. A child can heal things that adults spend a lifetime failing to mend. As for Landon, he slowly disappeared from our lives almost completely. After the hearing, he sent a few venomous emails, then silence. The restraining order kept him from getting near Ariana and Emerson. Vivian sent 3 long letters blaming me for destroying her son's future, but I never finished reading them. I put them in a box and locked it like sealing a door that no longer needed to be opened. Ariana didn't mention them much. Maybe inside her, fear had finally given way to relief. Emerson became the center of her world. Every evening after work, Ariana rushed home, scooped her baby into her arms, and kissed his cheeks over and over. "I don't know how I ever lived without Emerson," she whispered. I just smiled. Sometimes life gives us a reason to never look back. The Maple Ridge house, the place I once feared would become the battlefield the Clark family tried to storm, had now become a true home for 3 generations of women. I rehung a few paintings. Ariana bought soft mats for Emerson to practice crawling, and neighbors stopped by with baked goods and hand-knitted baby clothes. Every night, I read to Ariana and Emerson, as if making up for all the years Ariana lived smothered in fear. Emerson slept on Ariana's chest, and Ariana leaned her head on my shoulder. "You know, Mom," she said one night as the wind rustled the curtains, "I'm starting to like myself again." I brushed her hair. "You're becoming the person you were always meant to be." Ariana changed her style, too. No more dresses Vivian once called not elegant. No more buttoned-up shirts Landon preferred. Now she chose clothes that made her feel comfortable and confident. Her long hair was cut short and neat. Her eyes were brighter, her steps lighter. Sometimes looking at Ariana felt like seeing my younger self. A woman who thought she was trapped in the roles of wife and mother, but who learned she could stand on her own when life forced her to. One late winter sunset, Ariana held Emerson on the porch. The purple light of the fading sun fell across her hair. I stood behind her, silently watching the two of them. Ariana turned to look at me. "You know, Mom, I'm truly happy. For the first time in so long, I feel free." I stepped forward and placed my hand on her shoulder. "Your smile. I've waited months to see it again." Ariana leaned her head against me, Emerson resting peacefully in her arms. I thought, if I hadn't bought the house, hadn't pulled Ariana out of that locked room, hadn't stood beside her in court, we would not be here now. But I also understood something else. Ariana was the one who chose to walk forward. She was the one who saved herself. Still, I'm not a dreamer. I know life rarely closes every door behind us. A few old shadows always linger somewhere at the edge of the light. The Clark family had been silent for months. So silent that I began to wonder, was this truly the end? Or was another storm gathering quietly? One peaceful afternoon, while I was rocking Emerson to sleep, Ariana's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face suddenly went pale. I stepped closer. An email from Landon's attorney. The message was brief. "We have a proposal to discuss regarding property and legal responsibilities." I tightened my grip on Ariana's hand. Ariana took a deep breath, looked at Emerson, then at me. "Mom, I think the story with the Clark family isn't over yet." I held her hand firmly, feeling the warmth of tiny Emerson sleeping on her shoulder. "It's all right, sweetheart," I said softly. "Whatever they have to say, we don't live in fear anymore." And in that moment, I knew, whatever came next, my family was stronger now. We had learned to rise from ruins, had found light within ourselves. But as Ariana said, the Clark family story wasn't completely closed. The message from Landon's attorney left Ariana quiet for the rest of the afternoon. But as a few weeks passed, we realized nothing serious followed. Just some scattered, half-hearted legal requests that fizzled out quickly. And that silence became the beginning of a series of events we didn't wish for, but weren't surprised by. I heard about Landon not from the news or neighbors, but from an old coworker who happened to see him at a shopping center. "Helena," she said, "he looks terrible, disheveled, dark circles under his eyes, wrinkled clothes, nothing like the polished man he used to be." I stayed quiet. Part of me felt sad seeing anyone fall apart. The other part understood that the collapse wasn't random. It was the inevitable result of a life built on control and arrogance. A few days later, Ariana received an email from the HR department of his former company. They confirmed Landon had been officially terminated for violating conduct policies and creating a stressful work environment. The words were cold but clear: anger, misconduct. Ariana looked at me and gently set the email on the table. I guess he never changed at all. I nodded. People like that don't change for anyone but themselves, and Landon never wanted to. It turned out that after his divorce from Ariana, he quickly started dating a younger woman, reportedly a new employee. At first things seemed fine, but then his old patterns resurfaced. He checked her phone, asked who she was texting, threatened her if she didn't reply immediately, even insisted she stop working to fit the household. The behaviors were all too familiar, like rewatching an old film with a new cast. Ariana listened, her face showing only mild surprise before settling into calm. So it really wasn't my fault. I held her hand. It was never your fault. Only a few months later, that relationship exploded. The woman filed a complaint accusing him of controlling behavior, harassment, even emotional endangerment. Once again, Landon's world blew apart. And this time, no one came to clean it up for him. As for Vivian, I think she suffered the biggest shock of all. For years, she lived inside the shell of a powerful woman in the town's elite women's circle, where reputation, charity dinners, and gossip mattered more than family. But Landon's scandals spread quickly. News of him being sued by the new girlfriend, the termination, and the previous court case with Ariana all reached the community. People began avoiding her. Invitations disappeared. The church women's group no longer kept her leadership role. Her afternoon teas, once her pride, now had only a few awkward guests. One day I met someone who lived near the Clarks. They're falling apart, Helena. Vivian isn't the same. Angry, bitter, but also exhausted. I felt no joy, only a quiet sadness. But that was the price of enabling control, of attacking another woman just to protect an illusion of a perfect family. Meanwhile, Ariana lived more peacefully than ever. Emerson grew day by day, sprouting his first tooth, babbling "ma," then "na" for me. Every small milestone was like another nail sealing the past behind us, pushing the darkness further away. Sometimes the police called Ariana just to confirm Landon's whereabouts, routine for someone with a restraining order. Once the officer said, "He tried to request a meeting with you. The court denied it immediately. Based on the file, he's not allowed anywhere near where you live or work." Ariana simply replied, "Thank you. I don't want to see him." After hanging up, she turned to me. "Mom, you know." I used to tremble just hearing his car pull into the driveway. Now, I just feel relieved. I smoothed her hair and felt peace settle in my chest. The only time I saw Landon after the court hearing was when I took Emerson for a checkup at the pediatric clinic. I was walking out of the waiting area when Landon appeared at the far end of the hallway, probably heading to another department. He saw me first. He froze completely. I didn't stop walking, but as I approached, I saw clearly that he had changed. Not for the better, but in collapse. Sunken eyes, unshaven face, a suit hanging off him like it belonged to someone else. In that moment, I didn't see the man who locked my daughter in a room. I saw a person drowning in his own undoing. Landon opened his mouth, maybe to speak, but no words came. He looked at Emerson in my arms. That look wasn't paternal. It was the look of someone seeing something he had lost forever. I walked past him without stopping, without speaking, without looking back, because I knew the battle was no longer in the courtroom. Landon's battle was with himself, and I had no duty to save the life he had broken. Weeks later, word spread that Vivian had sold off several valuable items. People whispered that the Clarks were facing financial hardship. The legal settlements, the counterclaims, and Landon losing his job, all of it drained them. A woman once seen as a queen of the community now shrank into herself. Whenever she stepped outside, she wore oversized sunglasses, walking as if afraid of people's eyes. No one waved at her. No one invited her to the charity functions she once bragged about. The price of arrogance is not always loud. Sometimes it erodes quietly. As the day's light softened, Ariana carried Emerson on a walk through the neighborhood. I walked behind her, watching the peace in every movement she made. No shadow trailing her, no fear in her eyes, only a young woman building a new life with her own strength. Ariana turned back and gave me a small smile. "Mom, look at me. I'm different now." I squinted playfully. "You're brighter, stronger. You're alive." Ariana laughed, a sound I once feared I'd never hear again after all the months she spent locked away, controlled, suffocated. And it was in that moment that I realized a simple but profound truth. We were not the ones who destroyed the Clark family. They destroyed themselves with their own control, arrogance, and violence. We simply walked away, simply chose the light. And Landon, he chose the path that led to the abyss. That evening, while tidying the living room, I watched Ariana and Emerson lying on the new rug. Emerson giggled softly every time Ariana touched his belly. The whole house filled with a sound I had waited a very long time to hear, the sound of a real family. I knew that battle had truly ended. No more hearings, no more letters, no more explanations. Ariana was free. My grandchild was safe, and the Clarks had reached the end of their own making. What remained was peace, the kind we had paid for with far too many tears. The next spring, when the magnolias began blooming along Maple Ridge, Ariana stepped into a chapter she never thought she'd have. I still remember the day she took Emerson to the park on a weekend and came home with a strange, flustered look on her face. "Mom," she said, setting Emerson on the sofa, "I met a man today." I looked at her, waiting for more. "He works at the city library." Emerson kept laughing at him. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt at peace. It was a word I hadn't heard Ariana use in a long time. Peace. A few weeks later, I met him, a man a few years older than Ariana, with gentle eyes and a calm way of speaking that made people feel safe from the first moment. He greeted me with natural respect, not showy or forced. When Emerson ran toward him, he knelt down and opened his arms, not rushing, not insisting. "When you're ready, little one, I'm ready," he said in a warm, low voice. Emerson threw himself into his arms as if they'd known each other forever. Ariana watched, her lips pressing softly together, her brown eyes glowing with something like hope. The same hope that had been crushed during the years she lived under control, but was now flickering back to life. I stood leaning against the doorway, smiling without needing to hide it. "Just take your time," I told her when we were alone. "No one needs to hurry, but I'm glad to see the light return to your eyes." Ariana nodded, her cheeks flushing the way they used to when she was a girl. I want to give myself a chance, Mom, but this time, I'm going slowly. I said, slow is fine. What matters is that you walk in the right direction. One quiet afternoon, I sat on the old rocking chair, watching Emerson and Ariana play on the backyard grass. The late-day sun fell across their hair like a warm layer of honey. Emerson toddled toward Ariana, collapsing into her arms, then burst into giggles. That laughter spread out, filling the space that used to be heavy with worry. I leaned back, breathing in the scent of grass and the apple pie Ariana was baking in the kitchen. A sense of completeness washed over me, a feeling I thought I had lost forever. I looked back on our journey, from the humiliating wedding, from the cheap apron gift Vivienne used to crush my daughter's dignity, from the night Ariana was locked in, half conscious with fear, from the nights she called me through tears, from the first steps of a long, difficult legal fight, to the day Emerson let out his first cry, and now, an ordinary afternoon beautiful enough to make my throat tighten. I realize that pain, too, eventually closes, not by forgetting, but by being replaced with something bright, gentle, and whole. The Maple Ridge house, the one I trembled signing papers for, afraid it wouldn't be enough to protect. My daughter had become a place of healing, a place where Emerson's footsteps rang freely, a place where Ariana learned to love herself and trust another person again, and a place where I, a mother nearing the end of her life, witnessed the small miracle of rebirth. One evening, while I was folding clothes, Ariana came into my room. She looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Mom, I know you've endured more than I realized. Everything you did saved my life." I opened my arms and hugged my daughter. "No, Ariana, I just did what any mother would do when her child is in a storm. What matters is you were strong enough to stand, to walk away, to protect yourself and your child." Ariana buried her head into my shoulder like she used to when she was little. "But you never gave up. Without you, I might not have gotten out." I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window where the moonlight fell across the porch, gentle and steady, like my faith in my daughter. "You walked on your own legs," I whispered. "I only walked beside you." That night, as I lay down and listened to the steady breathing of the household, my heart opened wide like a field after rain. Our battle had ended, not with revenge, not with bitterness, but with freedom. Freedom from fear, from invisible chains, from the shadows that once crushed Ariana's life. Landon and the Clark family were sliding down the slope of the consequences of control. And we chose to walk toward the light. Emerson was growing up in a world where love was not tied to ownership. Ariana was building a new life with self-respect, gratitude, and boundaries she learned from her own pain. And I knew I had completed one of the most important parts of my life, protecting my daughter to the fullest of my ability. And now, as I tell this story, I want to offer a heartfelt thank you to you, the one who stayed, who listened to every turn in our journey. Because of you, I know our story didn't drift into the void. Because of you, I understand there are many out there also fighting for their freedom, or their children's freedom. If you have ever been hurt or are trying to rise again, I hope this little story brings you a bit of warmth, a bit of courage, even just a little. And before I close, I have a small invitation, as sincere as how I speak to my closest neighbors. Where are you from? What brought you to this story today? Share a little in the comments so I and others can send you a wish for peace. And if this story touched your heart, Please like, subscribe, and follow along for the next journeys. Thank you, truly thank you, for staying with me to the very last lines. Our journey may have ended, but yours is still long ahead, and I pray it is filled with light.